Let's visit the 90s all over again. Put on those hammer pants. This is Dope Nostalgia.
Hello, friends. Welcome to episode 127. This is Dope Nostalgia, and I'm Naomi, your host. And I'm very excited about today's episode because it's not exactly about music specifically, but more about the mediums that we received the information about our favorite music stars back in the day and today. So if you were anything like me as a child in my preteens and teen years, I was addicted to magazines. I would wait for the magazine store, like the convenience store, to get the magazines come in every week because I'd want to see the latest Bop, Teen Beat, Tiger Beat, 16, YM, 17. And then later on, I was getting into heavier music. I wanted to get the new Metal Edge, Circus, Rolling Stone, you name it. I was a total addict. And my mom really remembers that because she was the one who worked out all the money for it. I'd be constantly begging for more. And they would tell me when I was in the convenience stores that this isn't a library. You either buy it or stop reading it. Anyway, yeah, it was a huge addiction for me. And it's how I got all my pinups, posters, how I learned all my favorite facts about my favorite artists, the magazines. That was the way we figured things out. I mean, we have the internet now and things have changed. And talk about change. It drastically recreated how we receive information when the internet came along. Now there is a publication that has recently been released that's taking us back to that era of being excited to get the magazine and not only buying it at the store, but the subscription, the physical copy coming to your mailbox monthly. That's what Retropop is all about. Retropop Magazine is a brand new publication out of the UK, and we're going to learn all about it from its editor, Connor Gatto, who is my special guest today. Here's a little bit of information about Retropop.
Wikipedia moment.
Here's some information straight from their website, retropopmagazine.com. Step back in time to the 1970s and the dawning of the first disco era through the synth-pop-soaked Stock Aitken Waterman glory years of the 1980s into the club-crazed Britpop brilliance of the 90s and beyond. Retropop is a joyous celebration of pop music, feting the biggest hits, hottest sounds, and signature styles of the past 5 decades, and the artists who stood at the center of it all. Every month, Retropop brings you 100 pages of pop nostalgia featuring exclusive chats with the world's premier acts who candidly open up about their extraordinary successes and detail their latest projects. With one foot in the past, Retropop also looks into the future, spotlighting current chart acts and rising stars whose work is heavily influenced by classic sounds and upholds the legacies of eras gone by. In every issue, you'll also find bumper features, quick read interviews, the latest news, release schedules, reviews, and of course, our pop quiz. Now that was one of my favorite things too in magazines back in the day, all the quizzes. So now Retropop is available in store at WH Smith, Eason, independent newsagents, and online and through subscriptions. So you can find your nearest stockist on their website and how you can get it in North America. Just go to retropopmagazine.com. And I thought, hey, Retropop and Dope Nostalgia, we have a lot in common. So why not get their editor to come and have a chat with me all about the magazine and all of his great success with getting it off the ground. Welcome to Dope Nostalgia, Connor Gatto. I love the background you've got there, like the different pictures.
My wall of icons.
Yes.
Icons only.
Shakespeare's sister. Amazing.
Yeah. Danny Minogue, Bananarama, Janet. Got Mariah up there. All of them. There's always room to add, though. I always feel conflicted when I come on and people go, oh, are they all your favorite people? And I'm like, no, nobody be offended. There's more.
That's just the tip of the iceberg.
Literally. There's so much more.
Well, thank you. I want to tell you about this podcast. It's called Dope Nostalgia, based out of Canada. So I'm over in the West Coast, basically. And I talk with people who were big in the 90s as well as about them. So on this particular episode, I wanted to make it all about your magazine because
Amazing.
I am really excited that a magazine such as yours has been published. Now, this is great stuff. What was the motivation to create Retropop Magazine?
Well, it's kind of snowballed into something that it wasn't supposed to. It was really just, if we go back to 2020, I'd kind of been thinking about, oh, this would be fun to do. And I was working at a news agency at the time. And I thought, well, this could, just make a little website and I can have something to kind of write about what I like, and it might be good for my career to do something like that, And then when COVID happened and they announced the first lockdown, at that time I was working 5 days a week, but it was 7 a.m. till 3 p.m. So I used to love the fact that from 3 p.m. all through the evening I had to myself. But then when we're locked down, I thought, shit, I'm going to turn off the computer and I've got nothing to do. So this is the ideal time to do that. So I did it, and it just kind of, people took to it. It was really weird. And there's this kind of weird thing that you're doing it and people come to expect things to be there all the time. And I'm going, I'm just a kid at my kitchen table. Like, don't shout at me that there's no news stories today. So it kind of carried on. I got into the habit of doing it. And then I started doing interviews after a while. And I mean, literally starting with kind of more niche acts. And then it kind of grew within a couple of months. And there were people like Bonnie Tyler and Gary Newman and Steps and Gabrielle and Saint Etienne and all these people that I really loved. And I think kind of when you're doing it, you don't step out of it and go, oh, that's kind of weird that I'm just sat here, doing it myself and all these people actually want to be on it. So it was somebody in the industry, in the radio industry, actually kind of reached out to me and was talking about it because he does some radio shows, totally 80s and totally 90s. And he was like, oh, there's a bit of a crossover here, quite similar, let's chat. And he said, well, you should make this into a proper magazine. And I just kind of went, oh yeah, that would be nice. And so I came home and thought, oh, well, I'll put some feelers out and see, whether people would be interested in being in it. And of course, once you send out all these emails going, I'm going to make this magazine, and I just wondered whether you want to be in it. And then they all say yes, you go, damn, now I've got to make a magazine. Because all these people want to be in it. And that is literally how it happened.
It's incredible, the reaction that, like, from my point of view, doing a podcast and reaching out to the artists, and that you're doing reaching out to artists, the reactions we've been getting where they're like, yeah, sure, let's do it. I mean, I kind of attribute some of that to the fact that no one's been touring for 2 years.
Yeah. And I think before there was this kind of thing that when artists were doing interviews, it had to be all properly set up and, being a lovely venue, and journalists would go and it would be a kind of event. Whereas in COVID, everyone was at home. So there was kind of no excuse for them to not do it. They couldn't say, oh, sorry, they don't have time today. Because it's like, well, what are they doing?
Exactly.
Surely they've got 15 minutes. So it's kind of been a revelation.
Yeah. And the thing is too, like you said, like there's normally like a setup to do the interview, a location. They probably have a rider and all those types of things. Now it's like, all you have to do is turn on Zoom.
Exactly. It's ridiculous. And you kind of forget about how it was before, the kind of protocol for things. I mean, I did my first in-person interview in ages, like a couple of months ago now. And during COVID, we got a dog. And I mean, we already had a dog before, but then we got another dog, and this one doesn't like to be left alone. So I was like, well, I'll just take him with me. And there was this whole thing of, oh, well, dogs aren't allowed in this building. Where are we going to go? And I'm like, well, he's not staying down here. You're going to have to move this interview. But you kind of forget that, after 2 years, you get used to everything being so chill that to actually have to go out and make yourself presentable and sit there and kind of nod along instead of being on the phone, like, wiping down the kitchen or whatever. It's such a different thing. You forget.
Yeah. And I mean, one thing I appreciate the most about your magazine in a world where everything's going online is the fact that this is a physical magazine again.
Yeah.
Now
so that's what people want.
Yeah, especially
You
with
know,
the subject matter.
there's when you look at the way the music industry is going, physical is coming back with there's such a demand for it. So there's no reason why, to my mind, I mean, watch it totally tank now. Please God, don't. But that people want something that's got substance. They want to hold it. They don't want to pay to just read it on their tablet or whatever. And that's why I keep the two very different. We publish some reviews online as and when albums come out, because I think that makes sense and it's beneficial for people to read those, to buy the album, and also for the artist to get that kind of exposure. But I really kind of take umbrage when magazines will run an interview and expect people to pay for it to get the magazine, and then as soon as it goes off sale, put it all online. So it's like, we've got your money now everyone can have it for free. And then they go, oh, well, people aren't buying print. Well, no shit, because they know that 4 weeks later they can get it for free online. So I just think it's kind of, it would be offensive for me to say to people, here, buy this, support a small business, we're independent, buy this magazine, and then 4 weeks later go, no, everyone can have it, since since you've paid for it, everyone can read it.
Yeah, it's kind of treating your readership like they're idiots, yeah. I don't like that at all. I think it's disrespectful.
It just doesn't really, it's just counterintuitive on all on that a moral level. Well, maybe moral is a strong word, it's only a little interview, but also on a business wise, it's like it just doesn't make sense to me. You kind of want people to be invested and feel like they're getting their money's worth.
I was avidly into magazines as a teenager. I had certain ones that I loved and bought religiously every month. Anything from you're in the UK, so they're probably a bit different. We had like Teen Beats, YM, 17 magazine, and then there would be like the musical publications too, like the Rolling Stone. I like some of the hard rock ones we had too. What were your magazines that you loved growing up?
Well, because I'm only 25, so I was kind of in the noughties, and they were kind of fading out even at that time. I remember we had Top of the Pops magazine, which I used to get, which I loved, which was kind of, I would say that was the main one at that time. I mean, I guess Smash Hits was around as well, but I mean, you got to remember that by the time I was a teenager, that was almost 2010. So that was gone. Really when they were on the way out. Fading out. Yeah. So in a weird way, they'd always been a nostalgic kind of thing and I kind of loved it, because I'd look at them and go, my mum would get the Smash Hits, when they'd kind of do the 80s special or whatever. And she'd get those and I'd look at it and go, oh, this is so cool. I wish they had that now. And that's a really nice thing for me to be able to 10 years on to do that, and to kind of put something out that's quite similar and does the same thing, and, has the same kind of ethos and celebrates the music.
It must be very fulfilling to kind of have that come back around that way and create what you always wanted to have for yourself already,
It's really fun. And this is not to say that I don't take it seriously, because obviously I do. And, I really try to make every issue great, but sometimes I just sit there feeling like I'm playing shop, and I'm, getting all these people in it and putting it all together and going, oh, it's so cool. Doesn't it look great? And it's only really because we get all the online copies, for subscriptions, online orders delivered here. And that's a week after it goes to press. And when they come and I see it, I go, oh God, yeah, I remember, that's what we made last week. That's quite cool. But you kind of don't really, it's weird. You don't make the connection. It's almost like a school project. You're putting it together and going, oh, this is nice, and we'll do that. And yeah, that looks good there. And
when
then it
it's
all comes together and you go, wow.
Hands, the finished copy.
It's like, you go, oh, this is quite good actually. And I do sometimes, not to sound full of myself or like an egomaniac, but I do sometimes go, oh God, I wish someone else made this so I could read it. Because all I do is read it and pick out the typos, which is,
we always do that with
my red marker pen.
We always do that to our own art, whatever it is. We can't just sit and enjoy it. We have to honestly over-examine it.
And that's the most annoying thing when, there's sometimes, I mean, people don't do it too often, but there was one time a PR came back to me and said, "Oh, do you know, you've spelt someone's name wrong at one point in this interview. Could you change it?" And it's like, do you think I'm going to go and gather all these thousands of copies of magazines and like cross it out and amend it? Like,
no.
What are you asking me to do? Like,
don't they sometimes just in the next episode or the next issue just say, "Hey, we had a typo and we apologize from the last issue," kind of thing, where it's like, or is that's more like if you get a fact wrong or something?
Yeah, exactly. I was like, I think they can see it's a typo. Like, we've done it once. We can chill out here. Yeah,
true.
It's like the world's going to shit. This is the least of my worries. Like, honestly,
you're just trying to provide a little joy in a shit world.
Honestly. And they're like, "Oh, well, it's his name." And I'm like, "Yeah, I know it's his name. No shit, but who cares? Like, get over it."
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. It only happened one time.
That's it. They're like, "You've clearly paid more attention to this than I did." Because,
well, we want our listeners to know that you can subscribe just like you used to be able to back in the day. You can get it delivered to your door. Now, I know you're a UK publication, but are you international?
We deliver internationally. We're hoping to get onto international newsstands soon. It's, when you're starting out as a independent company and you're saying to this distributor, "Yes, we want to be everywhere," they're kind of like, "Okay, that's nice. We'll put you in a few stores and see." So it's kind of it's a snowball thing, and we're getting into more and more, and hopefully by the end of the year we'll be more readily available in international territories. But yeah, we deliver internationally, where the digital edition should be up very soon. It's been setting that up has been a back and forth, but we're getting there. So it's, I want to make it as readily available as possible. It shouldn't be hard work to try and get a magazine, especially in this day and age when, everything's so available and everyone expects everything to be like Amazon and to arrive the next day. So it's, but we're getting there.
Because you're on like the fourth released issue now at this point, right?
Yeah.
So it's still fresh and it's still growing. And how, like, first of all, you have a team that works with you to produce the magazine, or how does that work? Or are you doing the majority of it?
So there's me and there's my art director. And then I have a team of freelance writers. And that is it. Basically, it's really a kind of, it's small. People, somebody messaged me online the other day and said, "Oh, do you know, I'd love to come and see the office and see how it all works." And I was like, "You want to see my kitchen?" Because, this is not what you think it is.
So are you doing the majority of the interviews, Ben, yourself?
A portion of them, I'd say. It kind of just depends on what's happening and, what kind of thing it is. I mean, in the next one, I've not done all that many. It just kind of depends what it is. If it's something that I always like to do, I mean, obviously you can't always do people that, you can't be a super fan of everyone, but if there's someone better suited to it and who would get more out of interviewing that person and would kind of, throw themselves into writing it, then I'd rather they do it and have a good time than me sit there and slog away, and try and make it sound like I'm really into something. And that's, obviously sometimes it's not about being a massive fan of their music. I love talking to people and getting their stories. Yeah. That's what I enjoy about it, and kind of really talking about what it's been like for them to get from that point to now. And I don't think you have to, it's like, I like the music, but sometimes I don't, I wouldn't necessarily listen to it on repeat, but I can appreciate it and go, "This is an amazing song in pop history. How did it come about?" And tell me the circumstances surrounded it. And, there's times I've gone into interviews thinking, "Oh God, I really, I could do without having to do this today." And they turn out to be some of my favorites that I've done, which is really, it's strange. And I think that also comes from, no, I was going to say it also comes from that when you're a fan of someone, you've probably read most of their interviews anyway, and there's nothing more frustrating than when you're talking to them and they're giving you all those same lines they've already given, and you just want to go, tell me something new. Like, I know this.
One thing that I've found that was important to me in doing this show and in doing interviews was I'm trying to avoid asking questions where you could Google the answer to it. You know what I mean? I want to hear what the artist has to say about the things they've experienced, just like you said. And I don't want to ask them the same questions they've heard a million times. If I can at all avoid that, I will. I want them to enjoy the experience of the conversation and not be like, oh, I'm so tired of this, you know?
That is it. And I think it's interesting, though, that, I mean, I guess it's because there's not all that many music magazines around now that I find people are really happy to open up when you're actually talking about the music, because they don't get to do that often. They're so used to talking to tabloids or talking to, weekly mags or ones that kind of want a news line.
Yeah.
Whereas,
or they want to know too much personal stuff about you that's none of their business.
Whereas, sometimes, and it's funny because, there's times that I'm talking to people and I think they're so used to having to give those lines to get the exposure that I'm like, no, I actually just want to talk about your single. Like, tell me about it. And they're like, oh, okay. It's, so I think it's kind of refreshing for them as well to be able to kind of indulge themselves and to say, this is really good and it was really fun and I'm having a great time.
And very important too, to talk about not only what they did in the past and reflect on that, but also to really focus on what they're doing now. Because it was told to me by somebody who's very important in the music business here in Canada that basically when you approach somebody for an interview, you want them to know that you want to focus on their career now. Nobody wants to feel like they're washed up or all you want to do is talk about their one hit from like 1993, everybody wants to talk about what they're doing now. And that's really important.
Well, that's it. And I think it's really, if you look at everything that we do in each issue, it's based on something that's happening now. That's kind of how we go in and say, whether it's, even if it's an anniversary reissue or something, obviously that's rooted in the past, but it's very much looking at it from today's point of view and, to promote something that's current. And I think, people forget especially when it's artists that do the nostalgia tours and that kind of retro circuit, they forget there's, the career is still very much going. So, that's, I think if you can give people that exposure, that's, it's a kind of reciprocity thing. We talk about their stuff, the current stuff, and then kind of go back and see how they got to that point. And that's kind of interesting, I always think it's interesting talking to people who, had these amazing careers and been signed to massive labels and toured the world and done all that kind of thing. And then now they're kind of living a bit of a suburban life on a farm and they still do things and, they dip in and out of their career, but now they're very much independent and doing it a different way. And it's just that kind of the journey that's important and getting to the person behind the pop star.
Yeah.
Because, obviously they're still going out and kind of putting on this front, but behind it, things are very different to how they were 30 years ago within the industry in general. So and I think, people are interested in that.
And I think it's good because providing an avenue for artists to express with their fans what they're doing again is something that's beautiful. And it's nice to be a part of doing that and providing that for them. There's so many pop stars now that are like majorly famous and you hear about them on blogs and on like the Snapchat little links and it kind of buries other stuff going on, like Kardashian news and things like that. It just kind of buries some of the great new music that's coming out and people aren't hearing about it because they're just seeing that headline all the time.
But I think in so much of it as well comes from, it's crazy now when you look at things like, take like Lizzo's new single, for example, that, kind of debuted. It's a great song, but it didn't debut amazingly in the charts, but then it went viral on TikTok and then it gets added to playlists and then it gets high up in the charts. So you kind of go, well, are people really paying attention to it? Or is it getting this exposure because, people are doing a little dance to it, but are they going to remember it?
Yeah.
It's that weird balancing thing. And I think it's, the people that I try to put in the magazine, obviously there's some really big people. There's, a lot of really big people, but that's not everything.
Mhm.
A good song is a good song.
Yeah.
If I listen to something and think, oh, that's a really great pop song, then I'm going to get that person in it
Mhm.
because, more than anything, they probably don't have that backing to kind of get in the big publications, if you will, or to do all that kind of promo and get that exposure. So I kind of want to, while I've got a platform where you can do that, then why would I not support it?
100%. I mean, even record companies don't run the way they used to anymore. So they don't have that backing that they once had, you know?
Well, that's it. Like in the past, if you did an album that was a hit and then you did one that tanked, they'd say, well, it's okay, you can come back with the next one. Whereas now I think it's very much like, as soon as you tank, you're done.
Yep.
It's like on to the next one.
There, there's no room for error.
it's it's kind of, I really do applaud the artists that, keep on going and keep on releasing music and just push forward and do it their own way and find a way through to keep doing what they love, because it's, I talk to so many people and you kind of get the same journey every time. You hear the same things and go, God, it's really hard. And there's so much more to what's happening beyond the 3.5 minute song that we get at the end of it and go, that's nice. But then you listen to the journey to make that song and go, wow, that's someone's lived through that.
Yeah. Puts a whole new spin on it for you, on the meaning of that track.
It's crazy, but it's fun.
Who's one of your dream interviews? Like, who are people that you would absolutely die to get on an issue?
Oh my God. I mean, there's so many. So many. I mean, obviously there's like, Cher, Madonna, Janet, all the big pop girls I'd love to do. I was thinking about this before because kind of knew that I'd be asked this question. And I always kind of go, oh, I don't know. But I'd really love to interview Mariah Carey because God bless her. She must be so tired of answering questions about J-Lo and being a diva and like her whistle register. But she's in addition to her voice, she's such an amazing songwriter, such an amazing producer, a brilliant arranger. So I just love to actually talk to her and say, tell me about some of these songs. Let's talk about my favorite deep cuts. And I feel like she'd go, this is nice. We can like actually talk about these things.
Exactly. Deep cuts is the way to go. I'm always fascinated by that.
I love it. And, it always makes me laugh when I'm talking to people and I mention something and you can kind of tell they're like, okay, this is a bit creepy that he knows all this stuff about, this one B-side from 1986 or something.
You'd think they'd be so excited.
Well, I know, but I think a lot of the time they're going, what is this song? Like, this was not a single. Why am I talking about it? Because I guess when, that. When you think about being a fan of something, you kind of cherish those things. But I guess when you're doing it and it's a kind of just a throwaway track you recorded, they're kind of like, well, I just went in and sung the line and that was it. On to the next one. But
that's where you have to dig. You can dig a little deeper and ask them like about what tracks meant something to them that never got to see the light of day.
That is why someone like Mariah is so involved. I'd love to talk about those things because, well, she's got no way out, basically. She does everything on it. So
she would probably be so happy to have that conversation.
I mean, that would just be amazing.
I think so. But yeah, Mariah, that would be a dream guest for sure. Because I think people kind of make their own impressions about her that are based on nothing but hearsay. When she seems like she's a really good person who's really fun and entertaining and funny. I think she laughs at the diva thing. You know what I mean? Yeah. I think she makes it bigger than it actually is just because it's funny to her.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, she's what 30 something years into her career and still making. I mean, the Caution album is one of my favorites.
Mhm.
I did just, such a strong album, and to put that out 30 years into your career is amazing. So, I think I think in the US she gets a lot more credit than she does over here in the UK. In the
Yeah.
UK, people just see her very much as the girl from the 90s that sung that Christmas song.
Yeah.
She never really, in America she has all the number ones and that's that kind of legacy. But I think over here it's a kind of different perception of her. I mean, she still gets celebrated, but I think there's a very tight-knit fan group who are really, devout fans.
Mm-hmm.
But she really just kind of comes around every Christmas, and from, the 1st of November to December 31st, that's all you hear.
Yeah.
And then you kind of, unless she has an album out and does a bit of promo, you don't really hear anything again until the end of the year. But it's a shame because, there's so much amazing music. I mean, she nearly bankrupted me a couple of years ago when she did all those reissues. And I was just sat there like, why am I spending all this money? And I'm like, but I need it.
That's what I tell myself all the time. Every time I buy it, like a special like anniversary edition of something. It's like, yes, I need it. It's got all the extra stuff. And it's like you said, it's nice to have the physical copy of it too.
It's ridiculous. Like even on, record store day, and I'm going around going, do I need it? Do I need it? No, but I'll take it. Then I'm coming home going, I wonder if I'll ever listen to this. Or I'll just play it the once and totally forget I have it, which I'm very guilty of doing a lot.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
Dope Nostalgia listeners, I love you and I thank you so much for being a part of this show and its success over the last 2 years. We have what's called Patreon for those who want to support the show financially. For as little as $1 a month, you can become a subscriber and get bonus content, early podcast release, all kinds of cool behind-the-scenes stuff, and more. There's different tiers of membership starting at only $1 a month. And we even have some special merch for you guys who are in it for the long run. So please join our Patreon. It's at www.patreon.com/dope nostalgia.
Love music? Who doesn't? Who and what were the albums and artists that really turned you onto music?
The ones that made you really stop and listen.
The ones that shaped your tastes and opened your horizons. That's what we want to talk about.
Dig deep into your vinyl, CDs, or even stream away.
Let's listen and learn all about what made you fall in love with music in the first place.
This is Learning to Listen.
So good.
Okay, interesting take. Could you read it like a human being, or?
That's exactly the way a human would read that.
Take two.
The ones that, shaped your tastes and opened your horizons, That's what we want to talk about,
You know?
Dig deep into your vinyl, CDs, or even stream away.
Join Quinn, Charlie, and myself, Naomi, for a brand new album every single week on L2L, Learning to Listen. Found everywhere great podcasts are served.
Where's the ring? Here's the ring. Ring pop.
You can wear a ring around your finger, ring pop.
I love the way a ring looks. I love the way my ring tastes. Ring pop.
Introduce you to the flavor, ring pop.
Will you wear my ring? Ring pop.
Ring pop. It's a lollipop without a stick. A ring of flavor you can lick.
And tart and sour blue raspberry too. So now you can get off the stick and get a ring.
Ring pop.
I was seeing that you had some really exciting recent interviews, like Rick Astley, who's on tour in the US right now with New Kids on the Block. Hanson, Darren Hayes, they've all been there. Brian Adams, Canada's Prince, Brian Adams. So that's really exciting that you got those interviews. And, I wanted to ask you how do you approach them to get them interested into doing the interview for the magazine?
Do you know, I wish I had a more exciting story than I do, but I just kind of said, I'll get the press release through saying I'm such a person's doing an album, and then I'll kind of just. I think I have this way of emailing to ask for something in a way that kind of says, "We are going to do this. So when is it going to be?"
Ah,
So it's kind of like, "Oh yes, I'd love to do this. When's a good time to talk to them? Thank you."
this is inevitable, and you're going to be a part of it.
I mean, okay. Some are really, Brian was great. He was totally up for it. Darren Hayes was great. But I mean, they were all up for it. Rick Astley was kind of hard to track down because he was in America doing his thing and
Yeah.
obviously going through the UK PR. And that I was determined to get him for that reissue because I thought it was worth celebrating. And I did. I totally left it didn't leave it till the last minute, as in to reach out. I'd been trying for a month and they've been trying to get him, and it was on press day, and I did the interview at 6 p.m. and I filed 2,500 words at 8 p.m.
Wow.
because I was like, it needs to be done. I got to do it. So and it turned out great. And it's my designer's like, what's happening with this? And I'm like, just chill out. Just take a few hours off. We're going to be fine. And, my partner's like, why have you left it till this point? And I'm going, Darren, it's fine. It's all going to work out. And then it did. And it was great. Yeah. But it's exciting to talk to them and I really appreciate it. But what it always boils down to me is I just say to them, all I need is a 15-minute phone call. I just get them on the phone. They can be wherever, in the car. I don't care. Just, there's nothing that's going to need to be redacted. I'm not going to ask anything that they don't want to talk about. Just get them on the phone. Let me talk to them. And everybody's happy.
Yeah.
And it kind of, it works. And I mean, I get that, sometimes people are hesitant, especially with a new title when they've not necessarily seen it before and don't know what kind of thing it is. But what's been really great is that once the day before it all comes out, I send them all the PDF of the interview and make sure everyone's got it, everyone's seen it, everyone's happy. I mean, it's kind of too late then because it's already gone to press, but it's, I know it's all going to be fine, but it's just so they can look at it and go, yeah, this is nice. And, if you'd like to share it, please do. And every time without fail so far, fingers crossed, they've come back and said, oh, well, this is so great. Like, thank you so much for doing it. And I think they're starting to see, oh, actually, this is just a kind of feel good celebration. It's not about, it's not a snobby music magazine that's trying to put people down for doing one thing and, trying to push an agenda. It's just fun.
It's positive, and we need that right now. And it's just nice to see that kind of format again in a positive light. I mean, you take in a magazine like Rolling Stone or, musical reviewers can be so harsh. Critics are terrible to artists. And in this situation, they don't have to go through that.
Well, it's, I'm not a fan of reviews, but we have them because people want them. People like to read them, and also the artists want them. I've always been sent things that, we review this, and oh God, another one. But what I try and do with reviews is, and this is going to sound kind of counterintuitive, but I think it works, is to kind of frame it from the point of view of what they're trying to achieve with it and what they're trying to do. Because I can listen to something and go, yeah, it's not my thing, 1 star, but that's not helpful to anyone.
No.
I'd rather listen to it and go, quite often I've either spoken to the person or, I've been writing about it. So I kind of know what they're trying to get at. And then I'll go, okay, they've done this and this works and this, it sounds good. It matches the brief. So this is, if this is what you're into, then this is really good. There's no point in me listening to something and go, well, I don't like it, so nobody should buy it.
Your 1 star could be my 5 star. And all you're accomplishing, all that person, that reviewer is accomplishing, is making people feel like shit about the things they like.
Yeah.
And that doesn't help anybody. You like what you like.
Yeah. And it's like now when you, you see kind of old reviews of things come up on social media and they've, especially this, and you see the reviews of like Stock Aitken Waterman singles and things like that, and they're usually like 1 or 2 star, and it's like, oh, another, rehashing this, blah blah blah. Now when you look back on that time, everyone goes, do you know, it's actually really good pop music. But at the time, because people wanted to kind of push what was more worthy, it's kind of like, oh, well, we'll put those down because they, can't seem to do wrong in terms of the charts. But here's this new person that's really great that, more often than not, I mean, they can be very good, but they weren't the ones making the waves. So it's, people like what people like. And I think a review can, if it's done right, can help sell an album and support that kind of music and, give the artist a boost, then I'm happy to do it.
Yeah. And a review in a positive light. No trash. No trashing. No trashing people, right?
It's like, I think you can be critical of something if there's like a basis for it or a reason. Like if someone, for example, I've reviewed albums before where they've kind of said, oh yeah, we got this all new sound and it's all new and it's really different and blah, blah, blah. And then you listen to it and there's like the single that's different. And then the rest of it sounds like everything they've ever made before. Then I will kind of say, just a warning, if you're expecting it to all be like the single, then, maybe stream it first and check. Because then I think that's kind of like, it's like false advertisement. So I kind of think that's fine if there's a basis to say just a point. But if you're just going to say, well, no, it's, it's all like their old stuff. They've said it's this, they lied, 0 stars. Like, who cares? Who cares what I think? Make your own mind up.
Do you have any sneak peeks as to who's coming up in future issues? I keep saying episodes because podcasting.
You're in the podcast zone.
Issues. Anybody you'd like to share yet, or is it all top secret?
No, the next one goes to press next week, a week today, and it's a really great issue. It's actually, so obviously it comes out during Pride Month, and I've kind of inadvertently, all the big features in it are LGBTQIA plus artists, which is, wow. And I didn't, honest to God, I did not mean to do it. It just, which is how I think it should be. I hate the token Pride issue when they kind of squeeze everyone into one so they can say they've done it and then move on to the next thing. It was just
say they check the box or something kind of thing.
Yeah. It's like, all the brands that release the Pride sandwich ranges and during June, and then afterwards it's like, right, now you're done. Back to the dull packaging. But I literally realized, because I moved the cover around last minute. So I had a free feature. And I was looking through the archive of things that I had to see, for something unpublished that I could add in. And I saw this one interview and I was like, oh, that's good. It'd be good to have, this during Pride Month. And then I looked at the list and went, oh yeah, and that's, oh yeah, and that, and that, and that, and that. And it's like, this is great. I mean, there's other stuff in there as well, smaller, quick read things, but it's really great. It's the cover for the next one is not an artist you'd maybe expect, but it's I think it's a really interesting story. As I say, we were going to do something else and I couldn't get the kind of access that I needed due to timings and things. So I was like, okay, well, we can do something smaller on that. It wouldn't have worked for a cover feature. And then I kind of thought about doing this as a cover and went, oh no, it's kind of a bit, it's not what people would expect. And then I did the interview and I was like, wow, that was a really great chat. Like there's so much good stuff in there. And then I just thought, this just makes sense as a cover. So I think people will be surprised by it, but it's a really interesting, it's a good one.
I can't wait.
I think people will like it.
That's amazing.
And then going into the rest of the year, we kind of got a good run of things coming up, actually. Some big things, some kind of nichey things that people, the fans will really like. It's just about, I kind of like to put something in there for everyone. It's very, you kind of sit there and put it together. And on the one hand, you want to go, oh, well, I love this and this and this and this. And I could put it all in. And then I go, well, I might as well just call it Connor's Magazine. you know, it's all just things that I like.
Yeah.
But so there's things that I go, oh, well, should I put it in? And then I'm like, well, it might not be my thing, but they've still got loads of fans who would want to read this. So, you got to cater to people. You can't, it's funny. People will say to us, oh, I love this and this and this, but, I didn't really love this. And I'm like, well, you win some, you lose some. You can't have.
There's something there for everybody, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
You can't love
it would
everything.
be impossible to tailor it to every person. But I think, as long as we're kind of representing everyone and kind of showing the spectrum of music and just trying to get as much in there as possible.
Can
I try to do.
Can people write letters to the editor, send you like emails about, and then do you publish those letters?
Well, I don't, but if they want to write to me, they can.
Yes.
Like, write to me.
It's always nice to get some feedback on what you're doing. Yeah.
Just remember what we said about reviews, okay? That applies to the letters to the editor.
Constructive and friendly.
4 stars and above only, or don't bother. I gotta regret that.
Is there anybody music-wise, artist-wise, that you want to see make a big comeback who hasn't yet?
Oh my God.
You can take your time to think about it because I can edit this.
I'm just trying to think. I would love a new Danny Minogue album.
Ooh, Danny, yes. You don't hear much about what she's doing over here.
You
never hear much about Danny Minogue over here in Canada. It's always Kylie.
Well, she's not really done all that much lately. I think. I mean, she does the TV stuff in Australia, but I mean, music-wise, there's been the occasional single. But she's been talking about making an album for. I mean, I'm not exaggerating by saying decades.
Yeah.
So that would be amazing. I was really excited by the new Betty Boo music, which is just great to see her back after 30 years.
Yes.
Who else I'm trying to think. Do you know, I always do this when I'm asked, and then I'll come off and go, they just come to me straight away. As soon as we end this call, I'll go,
exactly.
I love all these people.
But you being so young too, what was your exposure to this music from the 80s and 90s primarily? How did you get into it?
I think we always had the kind of music TV channels on when I was a kid. So it was kind of like visually I'd be drawn to things, which is probably why, it's a lot of the female artists that I'm really drawn to, because they'd be the ones doing the kind of the exciting visuals. So I remember, it's kind of weird because, you talk about being exposed to certain people and during certain eras. So for me, I discovered Madonna during Ray of Light, and for Cher it was Believe, and Shania Twain it was the Up album. And then so I kind of got to experience it all in reverse, and then it was mainly my grandmother really who would then say, oh, well, if you like this album, listen to this album. And I'd kind of go backwards, and there was already this archive of stuff there. But I always say I think it's great to be in that position and to do what I do, because when you've lived through something and you remember it the first time around, your memories are they're affected by that experience and what was going on at the time, and you've been through the whole thing, whereas I can look back at things and go, God, this is great music, and that's it. It's not like you don't remember that you were going through a shitty breakup at the time, so you really hate that album, or somebody used to really annoy you at the time because they were everywhere, so you can't stand their music. I can just listen to it and go, this is really great, I love this. And I think it's a kind of, we have quite a few, I have quite a few younger writers that work with me, and I think that works really well, because now all this stuff is coming back around, those classic sounds are coming back around, and it's kind of refreshing to hear it from the point of view of people who weren't there the first time around but just love it for what it is.
Wow, that is cool. Like when I think about most of the artists that I've discovered, I always seem to discover them after they already had a few hit albums. So I've been through the same thing, and it's kind of nice to realize their whole back catalog is all brand new to you. And
Yeah.
it's amazing. I love that. I was like that, especially about like a band like Bon Jovi, because I didn't get
Yeah.
into Bon Jovi until the 90s.
Hmm.
And then it was like, well, they were the biggest thing in the 80s. So there it is, right?
It's a funny thing as well. You get you kind of forget, like when you're a fan in real time, if you will, like someone like Joni Mitchell, say how her voice has changed over the years. People who are a fan originally and love that range would then go, oh God, her voice has got, the range has come down and blah, blah, blah later on, and might not necessarily be a fan of that. Whereas my first experience of her was the 2000 version of Both Sides Now, which has the deep voice. So that was it's weird. Like that's the Joni kind of era that I gravitate to from kind of Turbulent Indigo onwards. Was my first thing. And then I kind of go back in time and have all this stuff there. Whereas I think, so it's almost like you go back and it gets better and better and better and better. And, it all opens up. Whereas when you're living through it and you go, oh yeah, she was great up until that point, but then I didn't like the way her voice turned or whatever. It's the same for loads of artists.
Bon Jovi.
That's it, obviously.
Let's go there. He's been getting a lot of flack lately because they just finished a tour of the US and his voice isn't what it used to be. Well, he's also 60 years old now.
This is it. And it's not a bad thing. I think it's just amazing that I've got Dale Bozio back there from Missing Persons. I mean, she's not actually here. There's a book, but if only, that would be amazing. But her voice is totally different now, but I love it how it is now. And I love it how it was back then. It's, you kind of have to go, it comes back to that point of they're just people. They can look after their voice as much as they want, but it's, you feel like saying to people who are like, oh, it's not the same. It's not the same. And it's like, well, just don't listen to it. What do you want them to do? Just like shrivel up and just like cease to exist? Like just let them put out an album. Like chill out.
You can choose whether you want to listen to it or not. That's totally up to you, but don't tell them what they should be doing. Really.
Well, that's it. It's just like, I just never get it. I'm a kind of more kind of person. Like, if it's, do I want another album? Absolutely. Whoever it is, put it out there.
I just want them all to be happy. And if that means making music, then making music is still making them happy, then go for it.
I know that's what it comes down to, isn't it? It's just like, do what you want to do, and don't bother what anyone else thinks.
Now, when we were talking about obviously the physical media, do you collect any vinyl cassettes or any other forms of retro media?
I have all my vinyl case here.
Yeah.
So it's kind of ridiculously like right down to the floor, and then behind me as well, down there.
Very good.
So yeah, there's a lot.
Very
Slightly
good.
excessive.
Yeah, you're good.
But I love it. I love to. I think maybe it comes back to that, getting into music through the videos and the visual side of things, that's always appealed to me as much as the music itself. So I love the concept of an era, and the artwork and the looks and the styling and everything tying into one. So I just find it really exciting when people really go for that and kind of put it all together. And I mean, it's all really coming back around, and some people go too far. I think there's a number of variants that's acceptable. Some people, maybe Taylor Swift goes slightly too far. Maybe there's too many variants of those albums that are never going to get played. And that, it's nice to collect to a certain point, but I kind of limit myself to one of each album. I like to go, which is a nice one, which is like a nice package, and I'll just get that. Yeah. And I don't like keep them sealed. I'm not, people say to me, why do you keep it sealed? And it'll be worth loads in a few years' time. And I'm like, okay.
It's meant to be played.
It's like, I'm not buying it for that reason. So I do get, as I say, when there's so many and there are, people just buying it for the sake of it, I'm like, it's kind of sad that people are spending all this money on something that, I guess it makes people happy momentarily, but when they're sat there for God knows how long, and then they're going, look, I've got no money in my account. It's like, sell your records. Like, you don't, if you've got 8 of the
Not putting
same
them to
one,
use.
and and all these big artists that can afford to get them all pressed, or then sat there with this great bank balance, I kind of think, God, I wish I
They
had that.
shouldn't. They shouldn't be just sitting on a shelf. They should be
Yeah.
either you should be playing them or sell them to someone who will play them. That's the way I feel about it.
Yeah. I mean, actually, I don't. I was going to say, I get maybe, buying one extra. So then you've got like a nice clean one for in the future if it goes out of print and something happens to yours.
That's true.
That's
That's
maybe
true.
like sensical. But when it's so many, I just go, I mean, whatever floats your boat. I mean, people, people collect
they're
and
not-
they love it.
they're-
And
They're not cheap.
well, that's the thing that I'm like,
Yeah.
maybe I'm just jealous that they can afford to do it.
And I
see
want to
people
start
ordering
collecting
these-
vinyl, but it's a matter of, wow, it's not cheap at all. So you're looking
Well,
at $20 to $40 for a brand new vinyl in most cases
This is the
in
thing. and
Canadian money.
Yeah. But I kind of, as I say, limit it so that I have it and I go, oh, this is like a special purchase. And then I can, enjoy it and look at it and I take good care of it and it's there. And I see people buying so many and I'm like, gosh, how do you do that? Even some people, people that I know, and I'm like, well, you never offered to split the bill when we go out. So now I know why.
what you're doing.
It's like, they're like, oh, I just don't have any money. Yeah, no shit. You don't
Yep.
need more.
Well, I'm going to wrap things up right away here. And Connor, I just want to make sure that I'll let you know, we're going to give all the links to our listeners on where they can get the magazine, whether it be like online, all your website links and such, and how they can get their own physical copies of Retropop. So I just want to thank you so much for what you're doing by bringing back a physical, readable, beautiful magazine that people can browse and read, like really positive articles. So thank you for doing that.
No, thank you. And thank you to everyone who's kind of bought it and given it a chance. It's, it really amazes me when, we're shipping them internationally and people, it's obviously people who've never read it before because, it's the first time they've ordered and it's not available in those countries. And it's I think it's the power of music and, people love music, and that's what I'm hopefully trying to spread a bit of happiness and bring it back through 100 pages a month.
Perfect.
Hey kids, put down that Tamagotchi and listen for a second. You can follow us on Twitter at NostalgiaDope, Instagram at dope_nostalgia. Visit our website at www.dopenostalgia.com or pick up the phone and call us at 780-851-8785.
This podcast is licensed by SOCAN because we believe that artists should be paid for their work.